Good afternoon. In this class, we shall be looking at the next part of female sex hormones, that is progestins and the antiprogestins. This is relatively easier as compared to the estrogen pharmacology. So, under this topic, we shall be looking at the types, uses, adverse effects of progestin, and we shall be looking at the antiprogestin, principally mifepristone. So the word progestin, it means favoring pregnancy. That is the word meaning of progestin. It is again a female sex hormone, just like the estrogen. And the natural progestin that is present in the body is referred to as the progesterone. And it is a 21 carbon steroid compound, and the synthesis of progestin is like the one we studied in the estrogen pharmacology. Here again, the raw material is cholesterol. And if you look at it, the initial steps are the same. That is cholesterol being converted to pregnenolone and the pregnenolone being converted to 17-hydroxypregnenolone. It's the same pathway that we had discussed in the estrogen pharmacology. But here you can see the pregnenolone is converted to progesterone by the enzyme 3-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. Similarly, the 17-hydroxy pregnenolone is converted to 17-hydroxyprogesterone, and these are the progesterone again can be degraded into 17-hydroxyprogesterone. And the remaining part of the steps are the same as that we studied in the estrogen pharmacology, but here we are only concerned about the progesterone part. So this is the area where there is a progesterone synthesis is occurring. So in females, about 10 to 20 milligram per day of progesterone is actually produced in the menstruating age females, and it is produced from the corpus luteum. And once the ovulation occurs, the corpus luteum keeps on secreting the progesterone. So already you know that the ovulation occurs under the influence of the luteinizing hormone, and then the remaining, once the Graafian follicle ruptures, the remaining part is called as the corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum keeps on producing the progesterone, which maintains the secretory phase of the menstrual cycle. Once a pregnancy has occurred, placenta produces a good amount of progesterone. Now, in the males also, some amount of progesterone is produced, just like estrogen. It is produced from testis and extraglandular tissues like adrenal gland, adipose tissues, and all. But the significance or the role of progesterone in males is not clearly understood. Now we go to the synthetic progestin. So we already know that the natural progestin, it is a 21 carbon compound, and the synthetic progestins, we can classify them into two parts. That is, first one is the progesterone derivatives, which are 21 carbon compounds, and the other one is 19 nortestosterone derivatives, which are 18 carbon compounds. Now we'll see the examples of progesterone derivatives. These are medroxyprogesterone, megestrol, hydroxyprogesterone, and normegestrol. So some of the examples you should know about the progesterone derivatives, which are medroxyprogesterone and hydroxyprogesterone and megestrol. So you can see this medroxyprogesterone being available in the market, and it's very rampantly used. You can even come across this tablet in patients in your OBG wards also. So medroxyprogesterone and hydroxyprogesterone. You can remember two of these progesterone derivatives. The 19 nortestosterone derivatives, they can be again classified into strains. That is example norethindrone and linestrenol, and gonanes. Gonanes are actually ethyl substituted esteranes. Ethyl substituted esteranes. And some of the examples are norgestrel, disogestrel, and the levoisomer of norgestrel is levonorgestrel. So again, the examples of the 19 nortestosterone derivatives, you can remember as norethindrone, you can remember norgestrel, levonorgestrel, and disogestrel. So these are the ones which you come across very rampantly. So I've just quoted those. So among the progesterone derivatives, you can remember medroxyprogesterone and hydroxyprogesterone. In the other class, you can remember norethindrone, norgestrel, levonorgestrel, and disogestrel. So we are not going to see into each one of them separately. We'll be just dealing with the classes as in a group way. We are not going to look into each of these derivatives. So what is the principal difference between the progesterone derivatives and the non-testosterone derivatives? So the progesterone derivatives are pure progestins, and their main action is the anti-ovulatory action. And whereas the non-testosterone, they are having anti-ovulatory action that is there, but other than that, they are also having weak estrogenic action, androgenic action, and anabolic action. So as compared to estrans, the gonades may not be having that much of an androgenic activity. So as compared to estrans, gonades are more preferred under this class. So what is the mechanism of action of progestin? The progestin, as the estrogen, it is also acting through progesterone receptor. They are again nuclear receptors. And just like estrogen, they are present in the female genital tract, in the breast, in the CNS, and in the pituitary. And the mechanism of activation and repression is the same as that of that you have discussed under estrogen receptor. So the same mechanism you have to again elaborate here also. Now, the pharmacokinetics of estrogen. So, the progesterone, the natural one, it is inactive orally because of high first pass metabolism. But the natural estrogen, for the purpose of oral administration, it has been micronized. And this micronized formulation in oil is dispensed in gelatin capsules. And this is having a kind of relatively good oral bioavailability as compared to the non-micronized formulation. Even the IM doses of the progesterone, the natural progesterone, are rapidly cleared from the plasma. They also have very short T-half. Usually in IM injections of estrogen, we learned that they are acting for a prolonged period. But compared to that, the IM injections of progesterone, they act for a short period. They are very fast, very rapidly cleared from the plasma, and they're acting only for the T half is only 2 to around 5 to 7 minutes only. On the other hand, the synthetic progestins are available for oral administration. They have got slow metabolism, and their T half, you can see, is almost like going up to 24 hours also. Now we look at the actions of progestins. So their principal action is on the genital organs, that is uterus, on the cervix, and on the vagina. So on the uterus, you already know it brings about secretory changes in the endometrium. So in the secretory phase of the menstrual cycle, it will bring about the secretory changes in the endometrium. Now, once suppose the ovum has been fertilized, okay, at that point, that is the pregnancy is due, then it brings about decidual changes in the in the uterus, and it helps in nidation and sustaining the pregnancy. That is why we had the name progesterone, favoring pregnancy. In the cervix, the secretion, the cervical secretion, it becomes viscid, scanty, and cellular secretion from the and which is very hostile to sperm penetration. That is the reason why one of the advantages of using it in the along in the contraceptive pills, that it makes the cervix hostile to sperm penetration by making the secretions viscid, scanty, and cellular, which is very hostile to the sperm penetration. In the vagina, it brings about leukocyte infiltration in the conified epithelium. These are the changes that occur in the uterus, cervix, and vagina. Now, what happens in the breast? So, it causes cyclical proliferation and turnover of the breast epithelial cells. This is called cyclical proliferation and turnover. But the difference is that if you give continuous exposure of progesterone, it will stabilize the mammary cells, and it will cause the continued proliferation of the mammary cells and prepare it for lactation. This is what is happening during pregnancy. During pregnancy, there is this is what happens. There is no cyclical proliferation. There's a continuous proliferation, and the breast is prepared for lactation. And at the time of delivery, when there is a withdrawal of progesterone and estrogen, then it will cause release. This will cause release of prolactin from the pituitary and milk secretion occurs. So one point you have to remember is that if you give cyclical progesterone, there won't be breast proliferation. But if it is given in a continuous basis, it can lead to breast hypertrophy, and also it can be a risk for breast cancer. Now, other actions which are not very significant are it can cause slightly sedative action, can cause some mood swings also, and slight rise in the body temperature, like zero when progesterone means after the ovulation, you can see that the body temperature of the female can be a slightly higher by 0.5 degree or so. And just like the estrogen, it impairs the glucose tolerance. But unlike the estrogen, it raises the LDL and decreases the HDL. This is the area where it is differing from the estrogen, and this is one thing that is not very favorable from the in the progestin. Now, on the pituitary, just like the estrogen, it causes a negative feedback on the pituitary. So, what happens? It will decrease the secretion of luteinizing hormone, just like the the estrogen. It was causing a decrease of the FSH and the LH. So similarly, this progesterone causes a pre-ovulatory LH surge, and thus the ovulation will be prevented. For that, you have to give this progesterone during the follicular phase. So it will prevent the pre-ovulatory LH surge. So already I think I've told in the last class that before the ovulation, there's an LH surge, and that causes the ovulation. Now, this pre-ovulatory LH surge will be inhibited by progesterone, and thus there won't be any ovulation. So the progesterone is mainly this will be having an anti-ovulatory action. Now, what are the uses of progestin? The principal uses of progestin are as contraceptive and as hormone replacement therapy. So both of these we will not be discussing in this class because these are separate sections. So we will discuss about in the coming classes. We'll be discussing about hormones which are having both estrogen and progesterone, and there again we'll be revising the role of the progesterone. And it is also an important component of HRT. Again, this will be taken up as a separate session. Now, dysfunctional uterine bleeding. This is a condition where there can be some irregular menstrual bleeding, and this is often treated by giving large doses of medroxyprogesterone, and it is given for like it has to be given for some time, and it can keep the bleeding in check. And once you stop this medroxyprogesterone, the natural withdrawal bleeding will come. So this is one of the tried therapies for dysfunctional uterine bleeding. Then endometriosis. So all of you must be knowing what endometriosis is. It is a condition where there is endometrium present at ectopic sites. Usually the endometrium is inside the uterus, but in this case you will have endometrium that is present at ectopic sites, and some of the clinical features are dysmenorrhea, some painful swellings in the pelvis, and infertility is one of the most common outcome of endometriosis. Now, what is done is continuous administration of progestin is done, and that will cause an anovulatory and a hypoestrogenic state by suppressing the gonadotropin release. So already I told you feedback inhibition is there. So there will be gonadotropin will be decreased, released, and the patient will go into a hypoestrogenic state, and there won't be any follicular phase or anything. So and this will cause less bleeding from the ectopic sites also. Now, treatment has to be continued for a few months, and this can cause the regression of the ectopic masses also. And some cases, even the treatment can be withdrawn after 6 months. Then we have the use of progestin in premenstrual syndrome. Now, this is a syndrome which is characterized by irritability, then mood swings, fluid retention, some breast tenderness, especially a few days before the menstruation begins. Now, this is often seen in women nowadays, and many therapies have been tried out for the premenstrual syndrome, like the SSRIs and the fluoxetine. But progestin also has been tried out for the treatment of menstrual syndrome. Then, in the cases of threatened or habitual abortion, so the individuals who might be having threatened abortion, they can be given progesterone supplements, that is either by the oral route or by the injection, and this will sustain the pregnancy. So you already know it is a hormone which sustains the pregnancy. So in individuals who are prone to threatened or habitual abortion, can be given progesterone supplements either orally or by parenteral route. And for endometrial carcinoma, also, they are having a palliative role, especially in the cases of metastatic carcinomas. But very high doses of progesterone are required for this. So, once again, the uses of progesterone is mainly for contraceptive, hormone replacement therapy, dysfunctional uterine bleeding, endometriosis, premenstrual syndrome, threatened abortion, and endometrial carcinoma. The ADRs are similar to that of estrogen, like headache, breast engorgement. Then you don't have frank nausea, but you have got esophageal reflux. Then you have edema, mood swings, rise in body temperature. Then sometimes irregular bleeding can occur, especially if the progesterone is given for a prolonged period. And it can lower the HDL and lead to, can be a risk factor for atherogenesis. Just like estrogen, it causes carbohydrate intolerance. If it is given by the IM injection, it can cause pain. Then, if given in early pregnancy, it can cause masculinization of female fetus. This has been shown in various studies. But however, many of the pregnancies are sustained by giving progesterone in the early periods of pregnancy. So, this though this risk is there, this progesterone is rampantly used nowadays to sustain the pregnancy, especially that if there is a risk of threatened abortion. Now we look at the anti-progestin. So in this mainly we'll be discussing about mifepristone, and this is one of the short notes also. So mifepristone is an anti-progestin. It is a NOR 19 NOR steroid, and it is not only an anti-progestational drug, it is also having anti-glucocorticoid action as well as anti-androgenic action also. Now, the mechanism of action depends on the phase of the menstrual cycle in which it is given. When it is given during the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle, it will decrease the mid-cycle gonadotropin surge from the pituitary and decreases the follicular development and failure of ovulation. So it is actually antagonizing the progesterone. So when it is given during the follicular phase, it will just decrease the follicular development and prevent the ovulation. And it is given during the luteal phase, that is the secretory phase. It will it will prevent the secretory changes in the uterus by blocking the progesterone action. When it is given later in the cycle, it will block the progesterone support to the endometrium. That is, the residual changes will not occur and the uterus will go for contractions and it will induce menstruation. So this can be probably used for inducing abortion because this drug will prevent the support of the progesterone to the endometrium. Suppose the implantation of has already occurred and then you're giving the mifepristone, it can dislodge the conceptus. So these are the 2 points, that the last 2 points indicate the fact that mifepristone can be used for the termination of pregnancy. And it is usually used up to for the termination of first trimester pregnancy. That is up to first 7 weeks or so, maybe up to 12 weeks also. And 600 milligrams as single oral dose can cause complete abortion. It's also used for cervical ripening, that is softening of the cervix. The 600 milligram of mifepristone can be given before around 24 hours before the surgical or the induction of labor or abortion is planned. Then it can be also used for post-coital contraceptive, that is an emergency contraceptive. 600 milligrams have to be given within 72 hours of unprotected intercourse. And it is also used for induction of labor, but not very popular. It is only used if the other measures are failing. Then you can use for induction of labor also. And it is also used for Cushing syndrome because it has got additional anti-glucocorticoid actions. So mifepristone uses are principally for termination of pregnancy, that is to induce abortion or medical termination of pregnancy, MTP. It is also used for cervical ripening and as a postcoital contraceptive. These three you have to remember correctly. And as an additional uses, you can remember induction of labor and Cushing's syndrome. The last one is ulipristal, and this is a selective progesterone receptor modulator. It suppresses the ovulation by suppressing the LH surge. So we are not going into too much of detail about this drug. It just remember it suppresses the ovulation by suppressing the LH secretion, LH surge. And it is also a drug which is used for emergency contraceptive. And so in this class, you have learned about two emergency contraceptive. That is one is mifepristone and the second one is ulipristal. So the under this topic, you can probably make a, prepare on a short note of mifepristone. Thank you.